Okay, today we're going to talk about our fat chapter, kind of review some of the stuff we talked about in class. Okay, first of all, while we talk a lot about fats being a negative part of our diet, remember they are very important in our diet, but also this chapter we're really focusing on the purpose of using fats in your cooking. Okay, so here we have the definition of fats: any of the solid or semi-solid, oily or greasy substances composed of fatty acids and found in animal products and some plants. And several of the videos I give you break down the structure of these different fatty acids in a visual form. You don't have to do that for a test for me, but if you're curious about learning that, lots of the videos throughout the notes will show you that. We reviewed all the way back from Foods 1 that fats that are solid at room temperature are mainly made up of saturated fats, and fats that are liquid at room temperature are mainly made up of unsaturated fats. And our liquid fats are like oils, particularly like vegetable oil, olive oil, canola oil. And then our solid fats, our saturated fats, are things that we cook with like butter, margarine, shortening, lard, things like coconut oil, stuff like that. Okay, lipids is just the scientific term for the entire group of fats. And then we did talk about, you'll see on your notes, it asks for the most common fat. And we said butter is really still the most common fat. It's been around the longest. It's the most natural product. And while it is high in saturated fat, it does have a lot of purposes. It's great flavor. You can use it to cook, to bake, just to spread on food. So that's why it's usually the most common. Okay, let's get the bad part of fats out of the way. Fat is an important part of our diet. It is still in the food guide pyramid, in the Choose My Plate. I know it doesn't show on the plate, but it is something that we have to have. The only reason it doesn't show on the Choose My Plate that we see right here is because we tend to get enough fat already in our diet. Okay, so this says some of like the negative that happens when we get too much fat in our diet. Like, we know it can lead to heart disease. We know it can lead to obesity, which is a problem in our country. But part of that problem is just because we're getting the wrong kinds. And so this kind of walks you through the different saturated, unsaturated, and trans fats. Remember, saturated fat is the one that is more solid at room temp. This tends to clog all of your arteries, to clog your arteries, because what happens is it can't distinguish between good and bad cholesterol. It ends up raising all cholesterol in your body, and that overflow of cholesterol clogs your arteries. Some sources of saturated fat we find in like dairy foods, like whole fat milk, butter, cheese, stuff like that. Unsaturated fats are the ones that tend to be healthier for us. These are more of our liquids, like our oils, some of our coconut oil, palm oil, whole milk oil, and stuff like that are saturated, but like our olive oil and stuff is good for us. You can find this in some nuts. Unsaturated fats are the ones we try to get more of. Trans fat is the one, while it is naturally occurring in some foods, the manufactured trans fats are the scary ones. These are when you take those liquid fats, add hydrogen to turn them solid, and then we get those partially hydrogenated oils that are trans fat. And remember, trans fat, we said, is like that evil villain that raises your bad cholesterol and lowers your good, which is exactly opposite of what we want to happen in our diet. So this kind of talks us through some trans fat foods you want to stay away from. Baked goods and fried foods are really the ones we really struggle with the most. And so this is just the Choose My Plate website that walks you through kind of all of that. Now remember, fat is good for us. We need it for insulation. We need it for warmth. We need it to carry those fat-soluble vitamins right here throughout our body. Those are important, that A, D, E, and K. We need it for energy. We know it is the most energy-rich, giving us 9 calories per gram. And we need it for flavor. And then the kind of fats you choose affect, how full you are. We talked about in Foods 1 that whole wheat toast with peanut butter is such a good combination of whole grains with a good kind of protein and a good kind of fat that kind of keeps you full longer throughout the morning. Okay, and we'll look a little bit more the breakdown of fatty acids here, but like I said, that fat does gives us 2 and 4 times as much energy, more than the 4 grams protein and carbs give us. Dairy sources are some good sources of fat. We just have to limit how much we take. But like, even looking at that, dairy products have vitamin A and D. The fat in the dairy products help that vitamin A and D get where they need to go in your body. Okay, we'll come back in a minute and look at the breakdown of the fatty acids.